So it's normal when you wake up to the realities of what you've been involved in that you feel like maybe you were stupid. And I hear this a lot. I see people write this a lot. I can't believe I was so stupid, or I'm so stupid. What's wrong with me? People feel stupid, almost like you've been tricked into being in this cult. Why couldn't you see it earlier? You see the regret in people for all the lost time, things that they can't get back. Now, I understand all of that, but let's get one thing straight right off the bat. Just being in a cult doesn't mean that you're stupid. It has nothing to do with your intelligence or your intellect. You're not stupid. You were used in a lot of ways. Your emotions were played upon, and there are large forces at play that play into our humanity and play off of it, play into a lack of tools or a vulnerability, and there are ways that humans can be exploited. And it doesn't just happen in cults. This is something that can happen in many areas of life. But let's talk about, there's two different cult models. Let's talk about how that applies to Jehovah's Witnesses. And as I talk about these things, think about how maybe it was used against you. But these are pretty powerful things. So one model is the bite model. So that is that if you can control someone's behavior, their access to information, their thoughts, and their emotions, then you can hold this person, basically. You can control this person. These are methods of control. And none of that has anything to do with intelligence. But we grew up in an area or in a cult where our behavior was controlled. We were shamed for certain behavior. Shame is a huge tool. I'll do an entire video on shame, but shame was a huge tool that was used against us. So your behavior is controlled because if you do something wrong, if you do something outside the bounds of the behavior that they expect from you, then you are shamed. And shame is I'm a bad person. Guilt is I did a bad thing. Shame is I am a bad person. It cuts to the core. And for us, because everything was seen through a moral lens, you must have been a bad person because you did X, Y, or Z. So our behavior was controlled through this shame. Then you have access to information. I mean, how many times were we told not to go on the internet unless we were going to jw.org or, when I was growing up, you weren't really even supposed to go on the internet until, of course, they got their own website. Then it was okay. But there was a control there where we weren't really supposed to do too much outside research. Don't really do the research on your own. We've done it for you, right? And if you're gonna research within the Watchtower Library. So our access to information was being controlled, again, through fear and shame. And we're gonna get to some of that stuff in the second model I'll talk about in a minute. But then you have T for thought control. We were told, if you look in the magazines, you're told how to think. I mean, this is how life is, or this is what the truth is. Just calling it the truth is a method of thought control. If you think about that, just if you accept at face value that this is the truth, then by definition, everything else must be false. So they're setting up certain patterns and certain things to make you think a certain way. They're leading you down a path. It has nothing to do with intelligence. For a lot of us, this was all we were exposed to, or we came into this. For some people who came into the witnesses as an adult, a lot of them, at least anecdotally, have gone through a lot of trauma, have a lot of trauma in their past, and they're looking for certainty. When you find that inside of a cult, it says you do these things, you get this reward, and you don't have to think because they're controlling your thoughts. So if you have a trauma in your past, you don't have to think or feel about it. You hand that over to the cult. They do that for you. You absolve yourself, and you don't have to face it. Which gets to the E, the emotions. So our emotions were being controlled in many ways. if you read a lot of the articles, they do a really great job of telling you how to think. Well, surely you would feel X way about this thing that happened, right? And they're good about saying it and then almost being like, right? So it's like, oh yeah, right. Like I must agree with this, right? Because they're sending you down this path to where you then must feel a certain way because it's taking you to this conclusion. And therefore you are taught to feel a certain way about things. Also, I mean, just think about, this goes to thought and emotion, but all the thought stopping techniques we would use. So if we didn't understand something, we would say, oh, well, it's just, we don't have to understand that right now. Or I'll leave it in Jehovah's hands. Or are you running ahead of Jehovah's chariot? These things are designed to keep you from thinking further, to keep you from exploring a subject. And it uses your feelings to impact your thoughts. Uh-oh, I'm starting to get anxious because I'm thinking about this thing that really doesn't add up. Oh, but here's a thought stopper. Boom, the door shuts closed. I'm not going to think about this anymore. Now I don't have to feel it either, right? So when you look at it, these things kind of go hand in hand, but there's so many ways. I spend a long time doing a video just on the bite model with Jehovah's Witnesses, and I may do that at a later date, but that's one model that high control groups or cults follow. Another thing that you'll see is the fog: fear, obligation, and guilt. Fear, fiery Armageddon. From the time that you're a child brought up in Jehovah's Witnesses, you're seeing images of fire raining down from the sky. Fear is everywhere. You're afraid to upset God so that he doesn't slaughter you at Armageddon. You're afraid to disappoint the elders or someone in the congregation because you might get called into the back room and have to undergo questioning. That could be a very uncomfortable situation that comes about from you just making a simple mistake or saying something that someone took offense to, and now you're pulled back in the back room and you have to explain yourself. Everything's made such a big deal out of it. It's life and death for everyone. Don't stumble anybody. If you do something and it stumbles them, it's not their fault for being stumbled or for being overly sensitive or just being ridiculous. It's always your fault. And if you keep them from reaching everlasting life, it'll be taken from you. You'll be blood guilty. All these things bring about fear. Obligation, all the meetings we had to go to. Are you doing all your personal study, brothers? Are you preparing for the field ministry? It's always like, there's always this, are you doing this? You're never enough. Never enough. They always want more. More of your time, more of your money, more of your dedication, your emotion. They want your family. They want you to raise your kids in it. They want you to tell everyone around you about it. There's a lot of obligation there. And again, that gets to blood guilt. If you don't tell them, then if you're obliged to tell them, and if you don't, then you can be blood guilty. Which, now we'll get to guilt. Guilt is everywhere, right? So the guilt plays right off the fear and the obligation. If you don't do what we have obligated you to do, then you're going to feel guilty, like you've done something bad because you didn't follow through. You're going to feel guilty when you do anything that's against their rules, their myriad of rules and regulations. Or, Jehovah's Witnesses have the rules that are kind of black and white that are set out, but then there's the culture that they develop through their talks, through their magazines, that really go above and beyond what their actual rules even are. So they're designed to, again, lead you down a path to where you feel guilt. Because if you feel guilt, if you feel shame, if you're afraid, if you feel obligated, all those things, you're feeling that because of them. They're putting that on you, right? So now you're looking to them to be okay. And that gives them all the power. So, when you look at things like, if you were to study with somebody out in field service, one of the things that you're supposed to tell them is that they might need to come out in service with you. When you're studying with somebody, you want to get them to the meetings or out in service. Why is that? Why is it so crucial? Why is there so much pressure to get these people to participate? It's because humans have an internal need for our thoughts and feelings and actions to be consistent. Okay? We don't act in a way that's not consistent with our values. So if they can get you out and doing an act for them, the act of attending a meeting, act of raising your hand at a meeting, act of going out and knocking on someone's door or accompanying someone, they start getting you acting along with this. Even if you don't fully believe it, even if you're not mentally grasping everything yet, you're invested. You're investing your time into this. You're investing your actions, your energy into this. And so, honestly, it's playing on you internally to where, oh, well, I must believe this because I'm over here doing these things, right? So all these things work hand in hand, for a lot of people from the time that they're first introduced to Jehovah's Witnesses. And that's why they have to get you to take stands, like maybe not celebrating a holiday, not seeing your family who aren't Jehovah's Witnesses, things like that. These are classic tactics of abuse. Look at a domestic violence situation. You'll have one partner who will try to isolate a partner, their spouse, from their family. That's what Jehovah's Witnesses do from the beginning. They try to get you to isolate. All these things play in to why people get in cults, and then you stay in cults because you have so much to lose. You're afraid. You feel guilty. If you mess up, you're going to lose your salvation, your only hope. If you mess up, you're going to lose your family and be shunned and have this spotlight shined on you from the platform that you've messed up and you're a bad person. And we don't approve of you anymore. And you have to leave us now. And if you want to come back, you have to sit in the back and don't talk to anybody or smile at anybody or make anybody uncomfortable. So you look at, and you got to do this for a period of time before we might let you back. Even then, they usually don't accept, a lot of times, they don't accept your first letter asking to be reinstated. They make you submit multiple letters. This is all part of the psychology of making you dependent on them, seeing how bad you want it, getting you to give them more and more and more so that they have control. This isn't about intelligence or being stupid. This is about control and how you control human beings. And it happens in other areas of life. Anytime you can create an us versus them narrative, someone is building allegiance to us. Someone is building an allegiance to a certain group, a certain way of thinking, as opposed to another. And you start seeing power dynamics just in that. So it's something to look out for even when you leave Jehovah's Witnesses, because this is just how really a narcissist, someone who is obsessed with themselves and can't see other people around them only as a reflection of themselves. This is how narcissists and then codependents, who so desperately want to be the good reflection of the narcissist so they can be enough to get the narcissist's love, but the narcissist doesn't have any love to give because all of their love is self-love. This is this cycle. Jehovah's Witnesses are a cycle of narcissists and codependents. It's people who are making all the decisions and controlling everything, and the people who are desperate to follow them to be good enough so that they are worthy or valuable, so that they can feel good in their own skin because they've been made to feel bad about who they are, so that they have to look to the narcissist for their identity. And the narcissist isn't going to ever give that to them because they're incapable. So that's why one of the most common refrains I hear from people who have left is, I just never felt good enough. You can't be. You can never be good enough for a narcissist. If you actually know the story of Narcissus, the fable, the tale, the myth, whatever you want to call it, Narcissus is sitting there staring into the the reflecting pool, captivated by his own shadow or his own reflection so much in love with himself, with his own reflection, that he eventually falls in and drowns. He fell into a lake because he loved his own reflection so much, thought he was so great, so beautiful, that he drowned. And doesn't that describe Jehovah's Witnesses, especially those who are really in? They're really in love with themselves. They're really in love with the organization. They're bought into being special, Jehovah's chosen people, to being unique, to having the one and only truth. There's an ego trip that comes along with those things, even though you still on the other side never feel like you're good enough. It's an interesting dichotomy, but this stuff keeps you stuck. And so if you're watching this video, not only are you not stupid for ever being part of a cult, you got out. Do you realize the courage, the intelligence, the critical thinking, the thought process that go into breaking this down and leaving something that is so powerful that it sucks in millions of humans throughout the earth? It's a very powerful thing. And if it's not Jehovah's Witnesses, the same things are used in other cults, and it can be used in politics. It can be used in anywhere there's an us versus them scenario. But it's racism, genocide. People can do horrible things in these scenarios. And perfectly intelligent people, because it has nothing to do with intelligence. It's about this huge thing. And there's not just one thing that you can boil it down to, because if there was, we could just address that and get people out, but it's not. It's about so many things. All of these things have come together and coalesced to create this cult, and to create the energy, the vortex that sucks people in and then keeps them stuck. And if you were born into it or raised in it, I mean, there's another level of, your parents taught you this was the truth from the beginning. Of course you stayed it. Of course you trusted your parents. It's one of the most natural things in the world to do. We look to them for our safety and what is true. So, all of this comes together, and it leads people down this path. And again, it just goes to show this has nothing to do about intelligence. You are not a stupid person. You should be commended and feel good about yourself, not stupid. You should feel good about yourself that you were strong enough and put the pieces together so that you could get out. And that doesn't even mean that the people who are in are stupid either. They're not stupid. They're just brainwashed. They're involved in this thing that manipulates them psychologically, emotionally, in just every way. And so they're truly caught in this big web, and it has nothing to do with how intelligent they are. And I hope that when you think about this, you can see that this had nothing to do with your intelligence either. You were just caught up in something so big that it really warped your sense of reality. And for a lot of us, it was the only reality we were ever given.